Today I wanted to talk a little bit about self-critique. This is a very important aspect of learning as a musician. We oftentimes don't enjoy listening to ourselves and are surprised as to how we actually sound. This is similar to listening to recordings of your own voice. You often feel like, is that how I sound? It sounds bizarre to me. Although it's fairly self-indulgent to listen back, as an artist, it's a requirement for growth. You have to listen back and see how you're actually sounding. When we're on the bandstand, we're dealing with a lot of elements, listening to the band, dealing with chord changes and thoughts, dealing with adrenaline and the audience. There's so many elements going on that we're often not quite clear as to how we actually sound in the moment. As we get older, we start to get a better sense of what it sounds like in reality, but listening back is the truth. So today I'm going to listen back to a solo I played over the song 4 by Sonny Rollins. This was at the Majestic, a local jazz club in Kansas City. It's with Eddie Moore on piano, Sebastian Arias on bass, and Zach Morrow on drums. This was recorded on my cell phone. I used to use tape recorders, DATs, ADATs, mini disc players, and now I just throw my phone on the floor, usually at my feet. Seems to get a decent mix that I can use to critique myself later. So let's jump into this solo. This is how I go about critiquing my own playing and trying to learn from both my mistakes and my positive attributes. Missed that pickup there. A little sloppy right there. A little sloppy there. Okay, that's something to think about. So in general, my immediate thought is I could work on my time. It's loose, which isn't necessarily bad, and I am listening to the drums and interacting with Zach, the drummer, but my time could be better. That's immediately what I'm thinking. One thing I noticed too is Eddie played like a D over E flat on the first chord, kind of like a one diminished sound. And I tried to play that F sharp, and I feel like it created an interesting change in the direction of my line, which I do like. However, it might have impacted my time negatively. So I'm going to listen to that again. Right there. I like the sequence there when I play the same thing up a minor third from the F minor to the A flat minor. Right here. Same idea. Didn't quite finish my idea there. So, trying to complete ideas with a lot of conviction, I would say. Also, Zach is playing great time, and I feel like he's almost telling me, don't drag, don't drag. I do like laying back to try to keep a relaxed sound, but perhaps I'm laying back too much. Right there. Little chafe there in the line, fingering issue. Right there. Okay, right now in this long expanse of eighth notes, I would say I need to break up the rhythm with something other than eighth notes, just leaving some space and doing something more interesting with the time is other than eighth notes. Playing diminished, and it took it kind of outside of the change there. Interesting. Not sure I liked it actually. A little ugly. Last phrase is probably laid back too far. The double time stuff, it was pretty conceptual in terms of, not as clear as I would probably like it, but I appreciate trying to go there so that I wasn't just relying on just the eighth note palette. I'd say my overarching critiques are work on my time. That's for sure probably the most important thing that I'm hearing. Secondly, my pitch at times, particularly in upper ranges, gets a little off. So working on intonation and trying to get tighter with that. It's one thing if I'm doing effects and trying to bend the notes and create like some of the outer stuff with overtones. In that case, I'm not worried so much about the pitch because those are concepts, shapes, sound effects in a sense, more from an avant-garde approach. But when I'm playing lines, I think the pitch could be better. I think the phrasing could be more deliberate, less eighth notes, and more deliberate sense of phrasing, probably with more space throughout. I could have been interacting more with Eddie, the piano player. He was playing a lot of cool chords and voicings, and I wasn't catching some of those. I was catching some, but I could have been more diligent in interacting with him harmonically, more deliberately. I like the dialogue between the drummer and I. I feel like he was keeping the super strong, keeping the time moving forward, and I was laying back against that. I'm not sure. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a drag for him to play with someone kind of pulling back like that, but I do like the sound of it in the end. I like the sound of the horn player kind of laying back and having the drums pull the lines out. So that would be an example of exactly how I critique myself when I listen to myself after a gig. Every gig's different, every song's different. I also try to make a point to find good things that I do like. I like some of the sequential ideas in the solo. I like striving to play something faster and more frenetic with more energy. I appreciated some of the harmonic devices I used. I liked the blues idea I was using over that last chord, coming from it as like a E flat minor pentatonic with a natural kind of a blues sound. Possibly on the descending minors, too much triadic material, just playing upper structure triads coming down by half steps. Might want to try to diversify that just by coming up with some different harmonic concepts to utilize when minor chords go down by half steps. And of course, just making sure I have the melody solid before I play it. Usually means going through it once in my mind before we play the tune, and it cleans it up. All right, I hope you found that interesting. and helpful. My name's Matt Otto. If you found it interesting or learned something, please leave a comment, and I appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next one.